Nous allons pendant...
And we shall now, for a brief moment, have the privilege to organize a short question and answer session. Basically, we'll organize a small debate with the President of the Republic of Gabon, as well as the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Paul Kagame, who will kindly join us on this panel.
On va avoir un débat en deux parties.
Okay, so we'll try to organize this debate in two parts, basically. First of all, I'll have the honor of carry out a first discussion with the President, well, with both of the Presidents of the Republic, and then John Quelch will take over from me, widening the debate, basically, with the three other Latin American presidents who are also among us tonight. Mr. the President of the Republic of Gabon, you're talking about a winning Africa, and to make an allusion to football, which I think is still one of your passions, how can we goal, basically? How would you symbolize the goals that we should give ourselves for the coming month? Well, if you take me by my sensitive cord and talk about football, I will tell you that what, in my opinion, is important for the continent is that we know how to make a goal, basically. Proof is that there are no major football clubs in this world without African players in their team. And those African players are, of course, big stars, very well-known, famous people. But when they come back to the country, they tend to make a few less goals. And the question is precisely, why is that? There might be an organizational problem that comes up in most of the reforms that we try to launch, basically. And so problem number one, or issue number one, is the organization of training in the case of football players, in order to put them in the optimal conditions, to give them the best possible equipments, to train them with the optimal tactics, and find also the appropriate venues and stadiums, basically. So all of these strategic elements that apply to the football world can be transposed somehow to our world of politics and economics. And then we have to make sure that all those players can play together as a team, and that's perhaps one of the biggest challenges. But all major winning team has a good coach, a good captain, basically, as well as some carefully selected members and players. So what we succeed to do in sports, and can only be done with a lot of discipline and strict efforts, all the champions will confirm it to you. Basically, talent and genius are perhaps 25% of the key to success, and the 75 remaining percent have to do with practice, training, and work, generally speaking. So we've got to make sure that we pool all our efforts together and endeavor to mark those goals in the future, thanks to our concerted efforts. Mr. President Paul Kagame, Mr. Bongo ONDIMBA just spoke a lot about changing mindsets or mentalities. How do you think, in the case of Rwanda, we could go about changing those mentalities? What is your magic recipe? We've often talked about this before, and I know that it's also one of your intimate convictions. So how can we best transform those mentalities?
First of all, it is a very important subject in my view, because if you look at Africa, the resources, the people, and where we are at this moment in terms of development, you find if you do the maths, then it doesn't add up. So what is it that is really lacking? Two things. One is being able to organize and do what needs to be done in order for the kind of transformation to take place. But before the activities, there is the mind. The mind of not only the leaders, but the citizens who are the participants, whose transformation it is that must take place. And then the drive, the motivation, but driven by the mind. So that's why I think it is very important, as the President said, that it all has to start with the change nothing else will change unless the mind that drives it has changed. So armed with this understanding, that's what we have tried to do in Rwanda. And we have laid out a vision. We have defined the problem we are having and that we have had in the past. And we are saying if we do A, B, C, D, we can arrive at some point and continue moving forward to make progress. And we are seeing that happen. But motivation, mindset change, right policies, and targeting certain priorities that will bring change.
Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais rebondir sur ce que disait également le Président.
Mr. President, I would also like to bounce on what Mr. President Ali Bongo ONDIMBA said a minute ago. Basically, he said that we needed to learn to play as a team, play together as a team. And I believe you did so very well between Luanda and Kenya quite recently, a few months ago. Can you tell us a bit more about what happened and what was decided there and why?
It's very interesting when it comes to the level of countries like ours. Before we even play as a team on the continent, you have to organize back at home and play as a team so that countries are moving forward as solid entities that have specific objectives. So nations working together is very critical. That's why you have integration. So now integration means pooling resources, bringing together infrastructure, people, and of course, with the people, you have to allow people to freely move across the space you have created in the integration, and so that everybody brings what they can contribute that the other one may not have. And there, we have also a growing market. We have everything to gain from the scale that is created by integration. So in East Africa, 5 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, we've been deepening and broadening our integration, working together. In fact, even to speed up the process, we said, for example, there is what we call Northern Corridor, which involves Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya, and that means it is connecting with the coast of Mombasa port. So we said, why don't we focus on infrastructure that can, for example, not only bring together these 3 countries, but actually the 5 and even beyond, because there is South Sudan, there is also Congo, especially if you look at this space in Eastern Congo. And so we moved forward and said, let's do something about it. Let's develop infrastructure. We looked at the railway that can integrate connect the 3 countries and 3, 4 more later on as we proceed, or even all together, depending on how each one wants to start. But above all, most importantly, we said, as we build infrastructure connecting countries, we must also connect people, meaning people should freely cross borders and travel freely as they want and do business as easily and as less costly as can happen. And that's how we have, for example, now put in place the use of just identity cards. We have identity cards in these countries. If you reach in a border post or at the airport within this East Africa, you show your identity card and you pass. You don't have to look for a visa. You don't have to pay anything. And that allows freedom of movement as we connect countries with infrastructure.
Monsieur le Président de la République, depuis qu'on a démarré cette discussion,
Mr. President of the Republic, since the very beginning of this discussion, we pronounced the word infrastructure 6 times already. And I think 48 hours ago, you were all in company of Mr. Kagame in Kigali at the General Assemblies of Labat, and this word kept coming up already on everybody's and in everybody's mouth. So Libreville is really transforming itself in full speed with a lot of infrastructure challenges. So in front of all our international operators or stakeholders here, can we compare Africa, Gabon, and this region in its infrastructure programs? How can we improve it from as efficiently and profitably as possible? Well, when you talk about infrastructure, obviously, it's a rather huge subject matter topic. So what you have to make sure is that you get started with a good draft, basically, idea or plan and concept. So we've got to avoid at all costs the roads to nowhere and make sure that our program is as practical and pragmatic as possible in its purpose to solve a number of issues and problems. Whether this infrastructure program aims or is geared more towards a touristic or mining project or whatever, it should give itself a specific purpose to start with, I think. But the development of infrastructure shouldn't be limited to a single road, of course. We try to approach this issue, in fact, in Gabon, as a package, as a comprehensive package. Of course, who talks about roads should also think about electricity, of course, how to shed light on those roads, and then make sure we build the appropriate wiring or cable network to make sure that those road infrastructures are accompanied by new technologies and optical fiber networks. So we need to set up a number of appropriate and relevant partners, be it for electrical, water, new media, and cabling technologies of all sorts. So it becomes and suddenly turns into a much more global and far-reaching project, and that's the right approach, I believe. And as we go along, we're led to develop even further infrastructure, not only because you come to realize that you'll need water and electricity, but for the builders who will be working on the site or on the field, you will also need to build new houses. Who thinks of new houses and new family groupings will also have to think of school infrastructure. And basically, all of these will gradually develop and turn into proper development factors. So that is how infrastructure projects are key, we believe, into African development.
All these transformation projects, of course, cannot succeed without the transformation of the human capital. What are the priorities that you envisage, that your countries, that the region, that the continent must prioritize to accompany the transformation of the human capital, and to talk about, let's talk about what is essential, which is education. Clearly, if we're leaving from the man, and it's towards man that we want to go. Man is central to everything we want to do. What we must do is provide every human being with possibilities throughout his or her life to have a job, to be able to give his family what they need. And for that, you have to learn. And it's important that we can think and that we think about a right model of education which must function at the same time as the people, and at the same time as economic development, and that's what companies offer. Too often in the past, we've launched models of education focusing right on the beginning, but not on the end, and onto where we needed to go. Where did the young people that were coming into education, where did they need to go? How would they manage to succeed, to enter into the world of employment? But that's really linked. When a young person starts school, in the first year at school, his hope must be to go all the way through to university and all the way through the curriculum. If that's not possible, what other ways out are there for him? What other issues are there for him if he's not going to go on to university? We must know that technical training is important. We must put that to revalorize that again, because everybody wants to succeed, to go as far as possible, but some don't have that possibility, and those people also must be looked after. And to become a carpenter, bricklayer, that is also a plumber. That is also essential. Not everybody can be an engineer. You must also have technicians. It's like in a sports team. There's the person who's going to put the ball through, and there's the one who's going to score, and there's also the one who's there to defend. And everything, there's a place for everyone. So the investment in human capital is something which is global, because we've had countries who've invested in the human being, have really developed their country, without that country having any natural resource of their own. And you see other countries which have natural resources and are not developing. Why? Because they're not developing in the human being. They're not investing in the human being. So it really is man who's at the middle of everything, at the center of everything, who must think about everything, what's going to happen. It's man who thinks where we're going to go. It's the man who's going to create the machine. So man is really an important, a crucial element of development. And all too often, we haven't sufficiently put that forward. So it's a notion which is really crucial for us today, and for which no sacrifice must be considered too big if we are to succeed. Mr. President Kagame, these 5 last years, I've had the opportunity to visit your country on a number of occasions, and every time I've seen that it's progressed hugely with regard, in particular, to the youth, as far as skills, as far as education is concerned. What is the business model of the educational system in Rwanda?
Well, first of all, I build on what President Attias has just said, which is very clear and important. We have learned lessons from other places. We have seen things work. Earlier on, we had the representative from Germany tell us how they have survived the last crisis and continue to do that. And one of the things that was very important is the investments they have made in vocational and technical training over and above other kinds of education and skills development areas. So that is very key. And for us, therefore, we've been looking for ways we can learn from what has worked even elsewhere, as much as we want to try even what could possibly work in our own environment from within. So we have targeted a number of things, and again, with the clear benefits that have come out of it. You see, we are talking about young people, but generally the whole population. Before they even become productive, before you invest them in education and so on and so forth, they must be alive. So we also invest in their health. Investing in the health of our people, the young people, so that you add education and provide skills, vocational and technical training. Also, that links with the feeding. In fact, it is very interesting how all these things link up. Investments in agriculture provides jobs for people, but feeds people as well. But initially, in our countries, generally in Africa, but particularly in my own, the history is such that investments in agriculture have been minimal, and we have only produced, we have had subsistence agriculture just to, harvest for just feeding our homesteads and ourselves, and it ends there. But this time we have stepped it up to make sure that we are able to have food security all around in terms of nutrition, as well as feeding families and everybody, but more important, again, being able to get incomes from what the ordinary people produce. So it's a combination of things. And for us, we have benefited from a crisis, if you will, because everything in my country has been a priority. We haven't been able to really say, we haven't had the luxury to say we will just do one thing or two or three. We have found we have to do many things at the same time. But investing in health, in education, skills development, vocational and technical training, and then making sure that people have what to eat, and then organizing our people, and then building institutions through which we are able to deliver and building systems to make sure that what we are doing reaches people, and there is feedback on the outside that we are able to say, this is what we wanted, this was our targeted, these are where our targets, are we reaching the targets, or we fell short, and why, and so on and so forth. So we go through all these processes, and we have found that progress is being made, decent progress in a very short time.
Merci infiniment pour vos réponses. Je vais...
Thank you very much for your responses. I'm now going to ask President Fox and President Toledo and President Quiroga to come up on stage here with us, and I'm going to ask my friend John Quelch to take the microphone in my place. So please welcome President Fox, President Toledo, and President Quiroga. Thank you very much. And we can now talk about the experience of